You see all the van life photos, you watch all the van tours, but do you wonder what this nomadic lifestyle is all about? Are you curious about life on the road? Social media calls it #vanlife. We call it home. I'll ask 10 questions to get you the stories that you want to hear from the people who live, work, and travel and adventure in this nomadic lifestyle. Welcome to Life on the Road. It's okay. Now we're good. Start over. Welcome to another episode of Life on the Road, where I ask 10 questions to get you the stories that you want to hear about her life on the road. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. This is great. We just finished moon landing, a very long and intense gathering of many, many nomads, many of our friends, and a very, intense weekend of just... Their big van events are always intense.
Yeah.
Like you leave and you need you need some downtime.
You do.
So we're here at a small event just outside of Flagstaff, and I'm excited we're going to get to have this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
It's really great to meet you too.
Yeah. No. Again, meeting someone new in the nomadic community is always something that I love, and this was kind of an opportunity for me to do so. But then also just to have conversations like this, I think are super fun and important.
Yeah,
so,
very important.
Yeah. As we always start the show, tell us who you are, where you're from, and how long you've been on the road. And then anywhere in between, you can shamelessly promote yourself.
Yeah.
And drop some Instagram or any other links that you want.
Well, I'm not an influencer, but I am Keri, Keri, and I'm on Instagram at Keep Up with Keri.
Perfect.
And then, of course, can't forget, this is
Okay,
Chloe,
exactly.
Chloe the Chaosy.
Exactly.
You can be her ninth follower.
Ninth follower. I love it. We'll drop her Instagram for sure, of course. Yeah.
So
the star
my name
of the show.
is Keri. I'm originally from Alaska.
Okay.
I'm a very terrible Alaskan.
Born and
raised.
Amazing.
Spent 18 years there and couldn't get out fast enough.
Wow.
I chase the sun now.
Yeah.
And I've been on the road about 6 years now.
Oh my goodness, that's impressive. Congratulations to that.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's I've been on the road a year and a half, and the concept of 6 years is amazing to me.
It goes by fast.
Yeah. Well, a year and a half has gone by really fast, but just the thought of 6 years, I have so much respect for any individual that's been on, as long as you have. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm continuing to enjoy it, so I'll keep doing it for now.
Yeah. That's well. I want to get into that a little bit down the road here, but I think that's an interesting concept. But Alaska, honestly, I'm trying to think. I've moved around a lot in my life, and I've met a lot of people in my life, but I don't know if I've met anybody born and raised in Alaska.
Yeah, well, there's only 600,000 of us in a world of, what are we at, 6 billion now?
6 billion.
So, yeah, it's not a...
Where in Alaska are you from?
Outside of Anchorage in the Matanuska Valley, Sarah Palin territory.
Okay, Sarah Palin. Good reference, or a reference.
Yeah.
Not a good reference, a reference.
Yeah.
A reference nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a small community.
Okay.
And my family's still up there, so
Okay.
I go up every couple years and spend some time with family, but it's like I said, I'm a terrible Alaskan. I don't like mosquitoes. I don't like the gloomy, overcast summers that we tend to have.
Yeah.
So I'll go up every couple years when I hope to find a sunnier season.
Gotcha. Okay. And then right after high school, I'm assuming, is when you kind of get out?
Yep. I went all the way down to Florida.
Oh, good Lord.
Went to a little liberal arts school down there for a little bit, and then I hopped around. I went to grad school in New York City.
Okay.
Was there for about 8 years. Went to California, and I've been on the road for about 5 years.
Okay.
Or 6 years.
Very cool.
Since, yeah.
I love that. All right. Let's learn a little bit about your life on the road. Question 1, what was the beginning moment or reason to start your life on the road?
Well, in New York City, I finished my PhD. I was married. I, no joke, had an office that overlooked Wall Street.
Okay.
Had kind of checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
And my life just kind of came hello, friend.
Hi, Mr. Wasp.
We have a nice big wasp right here.
Yeah, exactly.
And basically my life kind of fell apart.
Okay.
I got divorced, had a bunch of work stuff. I did finish the PhD, fortunately.
Okay. Were you going to NYU?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at NYU. I finished that, went into a really poorly run startup that, is a terrible first job for anyone.
Yeah.
And just had kind of like a catastrophic couple of years of my life that culminated in a divorce, deciding New York was not for me.
Yeah.
100% not for me.
Yeah.
And ended up with some severance money from the job that I had left.
Sure.
And ended up in California, San Francisco. I moved from one career to another, and I decided San Francisco didn't really feel right either.
Okay.
And with that severance money, I actually bought my first rig.
Okay.
Because I was on kind of limited time, limited means. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So I just bought a Toyota Dolphin, actually, and ended up traveling around in that and just loving it so much that even when I did find a job, I got remote work pretty quickly and ended up just doing this.
Yeah. Well, I'm always curious. So, this is pretty early. So this would have been 2017?
2017,
2017, okay. So, the concept of van life hasn't blown up per se. So I'm always curious to know when somebody's getting into nomadic life, like what were the things that you saw? Was it social media? Was it something else? Like what was the thing that said, "Hey, this is an option"?
Well,
was there something that in your life that you had come across that like
sort of. I mean, I had always kind of had itchy feet. Like I moved all the time, even in New York, from apartment to apartment. I had a car in New York City, and I would go camping. But I lived on a houseboat for a little while. And so it was kind of open in New York City, which is a terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Yeah. Holy cow.
But
Seattle's bad enough, but New York, I can't imagine.
Oh, it freezes. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So I was very open to unorthodox lifestyles, right? And it was actually someone I saw a YouTube video of a woman who lived in her RV on the streets of New York City. And she she was a product manager or something like that. Like it was on.
Had like a great job.
She was like in Greenpoint or something like that. And don't get me wrong, it was hard, but because I was living on a houseboat at the time in New York City, I was like, that's not a terrible idea,
that's
right?
Interesting.
And I'd already kind of decided, well, I'm not staying in New York City for terribly long. So I moved out of New York City, and then, of course, I found Bob Wells' Cheap RV Living, a couple other people at the time. A lot of which I'm actually friends with now, oddly enough. So it just, it was originally one YouTube video that had like 500 views. And I was like, I could do this. And then I started with the Class C and just really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. I love that. I always think it's really interesting how people find what's that initial seed. What was that thing that you saw that you're like, oh, that's interesting. I might do that, or that's something I could potentially think about doing. So,
I'm really happy that I found it.
Of course. So the Dolphin turned into, how many rigs have we gone through since?
This is my third actually,
rig.
And I've had her for 4.5 years now.
Okay, so Dolphin, then what?
I had a Toyota Highlander that I towed a trailer behind. Which was fine. It was an A-frame pop-up, and I did that for a year, but I felt a little bit like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz because it was so light. It was great. It was light. It was easiest thing to tow ever. But it was like, you think of those like A-frame pop-ups, they're pieces of cardboard basically it's like a jigsaw puzzle with 9 pieces that have to go together, and then they have to stay together. And the gusting winds in the Southwest. So I was in that for about a year.
Driving down washboard roads.
Oh,
and
well, that was fun. No,
okay?
it handled beautifully, but when it was set up, it wasn't. It didn't feel like as
solid.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
So like I can't imagine doing like full time in like a soft-sided pop-up. Honestly,
exactly. It'd be tricky for sure.
Yeah, and then I remember when I was driving from Phoenix to Sedona up to Flagstaff, actually, one of my first road trips, I was driving my Dolphin, and it has a 4-cylinder engine with 8,000 pounds on the back. Right?
You're not going very fast.
Exactly. And it's just kind of like, I'm like, my foot's on the floor, and it's like, do, 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 do. And I'm seeing all these like these Mercedes vans pass me like I'm standing still, and I'm like, I wonder what that is.
Yeah.
So I ended up, learning a little more about what the Mercedes Sprinters were, and she's treated me better than most of my relationships in my life.
I love it.
Seriously, she's been great.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we'll get to the rig for sure. So, question 2 is, what has been your experience with other nomadic travelers while living your life on the road?
I have barely been alone. In a good way.
Yeah, I remember I heard you mention this earlier.
Yeah,
let's talk about
that. So I actually didn't fall into like the hashtag van life crowd until recently.
Okay.
I joined a group called the Escapers, which is an RVing group, and they are for working age RVers, and they're very welcoming of van folks too.
Sure.
I mean, they don't judge me because I have a toilet in my kitchen. Much.
Yeah. Comment every now and again.
Yeah, but I fell in with them and just have been basically traveling with them ever since.
Okay.
I mean, 2 of my friends that are escapers are at this little random event, right? And that's how I met them. So I ended up just traveling with them for and going to a couple of those events over the last, really over 4 years. And then I'd say in the last 2 years, I haven't been doing that as much.
Okay.
And I have since been kind of leaning more into like the van gatherings, like moon landing. This was my first time at moon landing, but Van Life Pride was a really big one for me, and a couple others that were just, trying to find that community that is less about drinking and kind of the, drinking culture. I mean, you find it in the van life groups too, but I think it's a more diverse group in the van life gatherings. And
interesting. Than the RV gatherings?
Than the RV gatherings, yeah. But that's just my experience.
Yeah, so, no. But no, that's valid. I think it's interesting. And it's something actually we haven't necessarily broached on this show very much, is the difference between the RV community and the van life community. And there's some differences.
I can talk extensively
I
about
imagine.
That.
I imagine. So question 3, what has been your biggest failure and what has been your biggest triumph while living your life on the road?
Well, so I'm going to argue with the failure.
Good.
The hardest part.
Well, we'll get to happy and hardest. That's another question
that's a
down the
question?
road. Yeah.
Oh, the failure. Because that's the thing. Everything is just a learning experience, especially on the road. So I wouldn't really call anything a failure specifically.
I love your pushback on this, because it's the reason why I wrote the question the way I did. It's because people come to that exact conclusion.
It's not. I mean, it's.
They state a failure and then they come back 5 minutes later and they're like, "Well, that was my biggest triumph, actually."
Yeah, I mean, I got stuck and had to ask some random dude, for a tow out. I guess that's a failure it was failure of judgment on my part when I was on a beach once, when I was on Pismo Beach, and got myself a little too close to the water.
Yeah,
and I had a very lovely man named JP and his, Chevy 2500 or whatever it was, and just pulled me right out. Yeah, so I guess that would be a failure.
That's definitely a failure.
I did not lose my van into the ocean. That's the important thing.
Exactly. You're still a nomadic and have your rig in your home.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess, and then what did...
Your biggest triumph?
Biggest triumph. I guess I've really come into my queerness. I was married to a man for 10 years. Came out when I was 23. Got laughed back in the closet. So I've been out for quite some time, but coming into the nomadic community, I was like, "Hi, I'm Keri. I'm a queer woman."
Yeah.
And everyone, and it really gave me the self-confidence, because it's not like it was different than in my other life where I was like, I came out, but it was like I was constantly coming out.
Yeah.
Right. And so that has been probably the best thing for being a little more authentic to myself.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was maybe something that would have happened at another point in my life, but it coincided with coming out into the nomadic community. Yeah.
And I honestly think that's one of the greatest parts of our community is your ability to be your most authentic self. You know, and really, I was jokingly saying with Kevin, I worked kind of a semi-corporate job before I got into nomadic travel, and I've posted on Instagram, and Leroy tells a very funny joke about it, where it's me in a suit and tie, and I'm hair and not bearded, and it's not me, but it's me.
Yeah.
But this has allowed me to be my most authentic self, and I love hearing your perspective on that, in a sense that, like you said, you came out at 23. you end up getting married, kind of quote unquote being forced back into the closet, and then you know, really coming into the community, and then truly finding maybe your most authentic self.
Yeah,
which
and
is
having
amazing.
the most autonomy and control of my own life. I mean,
Sure.
working remotely helps with that. I mean, I still do a
Yeah.
9 to 5 grind.
Yeah.
But you know, I work with great humans, and I get to, you know, I'm not wasting my life driving to and from work anymore. I had an hour-and-a-half commute. I had to do 3 different trains in New York City when I was living on that damn houseboat in the Bronx. It was a terrible idea.
My ex-wife spent a lot of time in Manhattan, and you know, I love going to New York City, and I think it's a wonderful place, but I like visiting New York City.
Yeah.
How people live there and spend, you know, 5 hours of their daily life commuting to take some of the careers and make some of the careers they have. It just is not for me. Kudos to them, but
me neither.
I'm glad we have discovered the freedom that we have now. Question 4: Did you start your life on the road as a single person? What is it like living your life on the road as a single person?
I have dated a couple people on the road, but I've pretty much always been solo. I started. I got divorced or separated, divorced, and I kind of deliberately took like 3 years off just to get my shit together. And in that time, I like switched careers. You know, I built my own van, and then I very kind of slowly started getting back into dating. But I'll tell you what, like dating as a queer woman is hard when you're in one spot. Yeah, it's a lot harder when you're moving around.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think, and you know, queer or straight, I think that's a common thing across the board. I can relate to that. Like, just traveling and being nomadic, like having those conversations with, you know, individuals that live, quote unquote, the carpet walkers of the world.
Sticks and bricks is what I like. Yeah.
I'll shout out my friend Blakely. She dubbed them carpet walkers, and we've all kind of adopted to that and laughed about that. But yeah, it's hard. Like, it's not easy having those conversations, nor keeping those relationships sound.
Yeah.
If your desire is to bounce around and be nomadic, and it is my passion, and it, you know, for 6 years on the road, it is yours.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
So yeah, dating in general is just it's hard.
Yeah, I'm very happy solo, fortunately. I mean, it took me a while to get there, though. I mean, I had a lot of it's stuff to deal with when I got out of my marriage.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. And if you want to chat about it, I'm super curious, in a sense that, like, you know, you're coming out of this marriage. You're really discovering, maybe, you know, really truly who you are. I think you've known who you are probably your whole life. But in a sense that, like, you're now kind of free of what, you know, maybe was not a good situation. I know that's how I felt. And, you know, getting into an opportunity to then really, I remember sitting down and looking at my life going, what do I want to do?
Yeah, I did a very similar thing. I'm like, okay, well, I've checked all these boxes, but what do I want, right? It's expectations. And I would not wish a Wall Street office on anyone, frankly.
Right.
Knowing what I know now about the experience I had. I think it took me removing myself from the toxic situation that I was in, living in New York City, just in general, like the hustle culture. Like, growing up in Alaska, the hustle culture and I did not get along. To be having anxiety in general just didn't help.
Sure.
So, you know, that was the great part of it was, you know, growing up in Alaska, I know how to change a tire. Like, I probably have a little more self-sufficiency than some people getting on the road. So, like, the difficult parts of van life weren't difficult to me, especially after the houseboat. That fucking houseboat. Sorry.
No, you can swear all day long.
Yeah, that fucking houseboat was so much harder than anything to do with a van or a trailer or anything else. So taking myself out of that situation was really the best thing,
I imagine,
for me to get that perspective.
Sure.
Right?
Well, and I'm curious in terms of, like, that timeline. You said you came out at 23. Were you in Florida at the time?
Yeah,
like,
actually, it would have been
City?
younger than 23 because it was when I was in college. So it was probably actually 19, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah, so I was a baby.
So just got to States. You're in Florida. You hadn't made it to New York City yet.
Right, no.
You know, go to New York City, get married, get divorced.
Well, we got married in Florida, but then we did get divorced. And I had a really fun time. Like, I had my first experience, with a woman in New York City after my husband and I separated. And she was the first period after my marriage, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
And had a really fun slut period. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Hey, I'm all for that. Trust me.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm really happy for people that take the time to have that fun when they've been so disciplined. You know, because like I got a PhD. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that or morally superior about it, but I didn't make time for fun, really, or to even to get to know myself. And God knows in PhD programs, they don't teach you how to become a human. They barely teach you how to be a professional.
I love it.
So I'm glad I had the time and took the space to figure out who I was again. And
Well, I think that's such an interesting thing in terms of like, we talk about it a lot on this show where it's oftentimes it's some event that kind of flips your mindset in terms of getting potentially into this lifestyle. But then, you know, really pursuing it and giving it some real thought, like you start to open up and you go, oh my God, I have the ability to be exactly what I want and who I am, you know, and I think that's pretty amazing that, you know, over the last 6 years, like obviously you've really, you know, discovered exactly that about you, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, we're all still in the corporate well, some of us are still in the corporate hamster wheel.
Sure.
And I don't entirely regret that, but you know, so
I mean, I think
so business Keri aside, yes, absolutely.
I mean, I think you can carry yourself exactly who you want to be and still like have that profession. You know, that's completely acceptable. But I do think that, you know, being in this lifestyle and living the way we do, you know, you really do have the opportunity to kind of look internally, you know, really find like who and what you are. I think it's pretty amazing. Question 5, best place, craziest place you've had sex during your life on the road?
Let's see. I think it was, have you ever been through San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, you drive down from, it's like in the outer Sunset neighborhood, they have those pullouts on the beach. Yep, you're in my van.
There we go. Yep. Love it. That's a great spot. It's a very, very good spot.
And it was windy, so no one could tell.
The van was moving anyway. Every vehicle was moving anyway. That's
awesome.
That is a good spot. San Francisco's a beautiful place.
Pretty sure we had a romantic dinner on the beach after that or something like
that.
Yeah, it really wasn't a terrible. Yeah, really wasn't a terrible evening.
No, not at all. Yeah, San Francisco's like, I love San Francisco so much, but I hate taking my van into San Francisco.
God, me too.
Like, it's just this like in more recent years as well, with all the break-ins and being a photographer and, you know, walking around with gear, like it's a nightmare.
I had a Doberman at the time, so that helped.
Oh, geez.
He slept in the front seat, fortunately, so that helped. I assume so.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trust her to to guard much.
to defend defend the rig. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, love San Francisco to death. Like it's as a deadhead, it's true to my heart. But at the same time, I stay on the outskirts and then travel in.
Me too.
Yeah, or Airbnb for a few days.
I've got a couple friends with driveways there still because I spent a couple years there, and I mean they're in South Bay, so it's a little different.
Yeah, I have a friend in Marin, like just north.
Oh, perfect.
And so,
exactly. Even better. You're right across the bridge.
Yep. Yeah. So, but like going into the city, I don't mind taking out the end of the city. It's super fun, but like I'm not parking there or hanging out there.
No, I mean, I had like a 10-year-old piece of shit Honda Fit that I drove around. I mean, it would like. It had been in a handful of accidents. Like, I raised the front end a couple times.
Gotcha.
And like I was dog sitting for someone in Berkeley one night, and just one night, and I just parked.
Yep.
And I came out in the morning, and someone had smashed my window in. Like, no one, they didn't take anything. Not that there was anything of value in there, but they didn't take anything. They just smashed my window because they could. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm driving around the city with like a smashed windshield trying to find a place to replace it.
Yeah.
It's
the worst.
Yeah.
There's Again, love San Francisco to death, but just
it's a great place. Same with New York City. I would visit it. I have good friends there. I'm very happy to visit.
Yep, and then go.
Yep, exactly. Same with Alaska.
Question 6, and we kind of touched on it with the corporate world. What do you do to make money while living your life on the road?
So I am a scientist.
I love that.
So I do a combination. So my PhD work was in women's health, actually.
Okay.
So this is a true story. I had human eggs in my pocket at some point.
Okay.
And because I worked with a fertility clinic, and so what would happen was women would undergoing fertility treatment would have extra eggs left over that would be discarded, right?
Okay.
And so if you left them if you incubated them a little longer, they would actually they would mature a little bit, but they would never become a baby, right? And so they donated them to me, and I would take them to my lab and study them, right? Like no modifications, none of the DNA manipulations or anything. So,
just purely an understanding of,
Right. So my background's in clinical research. With an emphasis in genetics and molecular biology. And so now I do a combination of that, doing research, and I also do artificial intelligence and machine learning for a small digital health company.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I've done
what was your undergrad? What was your master's?
Biology all the way.
Okay.
Neuroscience, immunology, and microbiology in my master's, and then my PhD was just the molecular biology. Yeah.
Amazing. That's interesting.
Computational biology is a good way to look at it.
Okay. But I mean, even like, I'm not going to ask you your age, but we're older than most. So it's interesting that you're now kind of drifting into the AI world, which is really interesting.
Well, I've been in the AI world for 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been doing it for some time.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Absolutely.
I'm super curious about that.
Yeah, I even worked for the DoD for a hot minute.
Wow.
Yeah, doing some stuff I am not going to talk about.
Exactly. Very cool. Like what has been like that on the medical side of things in the in like AI use on that end of it versus like we all know it.
So there actually hasn't been a lot of movement forward, and in part because everyone's familiar at this point with ChatGPT, right? That is trained on a large body of written language, right? And most of the internet is text, right? There's video and there's audio and there's images and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, but the majority is on written word.
And that's structured, right? So you can actually power these really big models, not easily, but like you have that data available, right? And that is not the same for medical. And part of it is like, and this is one of the questionable things that OpenAI did when they were putting the training set together for ChatGPT was they had, I think it was Kenyans for like a couple $1 an hour, like looking at some of the horrific stuff on the internet.
Wow.
But they were annotating the data set to say, what is the meaning of this? Is this something terrible? Should we not include it? Right. So like they can cull and curate that data set cheaply.
Yeah.
Well, imagine if you had to get a couple of radiologists to do that, right? You're talking $300 an hour.
I was going to say
minimum, right?
Yeah,
so the cost of annotating that data set, and people are doing that now, but it's a much slower because it's a much more expensive process. Doctors are expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to so they don't have EMRs, electronic medical records, are all very they're protected very...
I was going to say not accessible.
Well, right, exactly. That's the word I'm trying to find. You can't get access to them for very good
for
legal
very
reasons.
good reasons, yeah.
Right. So you have these big data silos that are just inaccessible, and you really have a hard time putting them together.
That makes sense. Yeah.
From a scientific perspective, like the genetic side of things and kind of the biology of it, back when I was working in genetics more directly about 7 years ago, they said, well, you get the $1,000 genome, but it's a $100,000 bioinformatics problem. So you can sequence all you want, but providing the annotation, providing the meaning to that data is really limited.
That makes sense.
So, I mean, there's some things like AI is getting really good at things that are difficult, like, let's say triaging patients in an ER, right? Like how it takes time to evaluate those patients to get their, but the mental, the algorithm that they use can actually be automated pretty easily.
Actually, that's kind of where my question was going to go, is it possible to take a very, very, very small subset of a medical field, something like you said, triaging an ER patient or patients, or even something in your genetics field, to where it's the data is present. We can find a way to input the data, correlate the data to allow some type of AI interaction that helps speed up our workflow in some way or another.
And I think that's sort of like that augmentation aspect of it.
Yeah.
Is where there are a lot of wins now, and I think there will continue to be.
Okay.
I mean, I use ChatGPT is a lot like a really eager intern in my mind. Like, it's terrible at like doing the high-end stuff. But like, but you tell them to go do something, it'll bring something back.
Yep.
It might make shit up, which is the hallucinations and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it just, if you need like
if you're getting your mind spinning on something, it's kind of a helpful reference.
Good. You know, I will ideate with it. Like, I'll talk to it, and I'm like, okay, tell me different approaches for this particular problem, right? But it just doesn't really have the attention span to like actually build a solution.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it for what it's worth, and it augments my work. But like, as someone who's been doing artificial intelligence and machine learning for like 7 years, the amount it helps me is this much.
Okay.
Now, I think where it will help people more broadly is like people starting their careers. Because the gap in their knowledge is like this, right? The more basic tasks, it will absolutely help.
Yeah, and for me, and again, as a creator, as somebody that's very, artistic and design based, I've used it in a way to just kind of get my mind spinning. To just kind of get my mind thinking. Like, and also like, I haven't struggled with writing, but like more often than not, like I do. I think I speak well, but I don't write well. And I'll have people rewrite or reread what I write and be like, oh, let's correct some of this.
I will 100% do that. It's very good at like softening the language.
Yeah, exactly. It's been one benefit for me. And two, just to like, sometimes like I have a creative idea, I'll try and put it out in words. And sometimes I've struggled with that. And I've been going to ChatGPT about like, is this something that like is good? Come and talk to me about this. And I don't know. It's been interesting.
Well, I think that one of the things, so getting the last thing I'll say about the medicine piece is that I remember early on when it came out, 6 months ago?
Yeah, exactly.
There was a doctor who like had this zebra case, which is like a really rare disorder.
Okay.
And he described it to ChatGPT, and this was before ChatGPT 4.
Yeah, it wasn't anything.
This was like ChatGPT 3 point something.
Yeah.
So it was even before it was passing the USMLE at like the 90th percentile, which is the board exam for doctors.
Right.
And it put it in there. And it was like, and it actually got the diagnosis right.
Wow.
But when it was asked to like qualify, like, why did you come to this? It made up a bunch of shit. And it's pretty, people are pretty aware now that like it will make stuff up, including citations, including like rationale, because it's generative. It's by definition needs to produce something.
Yes.
Whether or not that's real or useful is the main thing, right? So.
Well, and I think that's going to be very interesting in the next 10 to 20 years with
next
AI.
5 years,
Yeah, exactly. 2 years. Let's, be realistic about it. But like how that gets discerned and how that information gets used and discerned in the near future is going to be really interesting.
It will be really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that I have the opportunity to kind of be at the...
I'm
not dealing with large language models or huge data sets like that, but it sure is really interesting to think about it.
As somebody standing on the outside of AI, I think it's fascinating. Like I'm coming across, like as a photographer, like now, one-touch photo edits like in minutes.
That's pretty incredible.
Like like there's some now AI products that are being built into like Lightroom and certain things that like it's literally like wedding photographers, like it'll learn your style of editing over a certain number of time, and then all of a sudden it's one click and it's like, good Lord.
And those, and I've not ever met anyone who really loves editing photos, so I can imagine that's a great great.
I do, but not thousands. I'm currently sitting on thousands for moon landing, and that seems
hopefully
daunting.
It'll help you.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Question 7. What is your rig? Who built it, and why did you choose it to live your life on the road?
So we talked a little bit about the ones I've had before. Yep. This is Calypso, my 170 wheelbase rear-wheel drive 2012 Sprinter.
Okay.
And I built the first version.
Okay.
With a little bit of help from my father, kind of like lifting stuff up.
Yeah.
And, he's 80s. He's a poor supervisor even. So, but I did all the electrical, did all the insulation, did the floor.
Yep.
And it was falling apart as I was driving down the road. So I am not a carpenter.
Okay.
So I 6 months down the road, I paid someone to redo it, and they just did the carpentry. Basically, like they built my cabinets and built the overhead cabinets, and for the most part, it's been wonderful. The only pieces that I regret are the decisions I made, and I overruled the builder, and I have since regretted that. So use 3/4 inch plywood. Don't use 1/2 inch plywood. It won't withstand the
the rigors of the road.
Exactly. But sure enough, everything that he built is, with a couple of exceptions of like hinges and stuff that are really just built for houses,
simple
not
things.
for this sort of thing. Yeah. So it's been great otherwise.
That's awesome.
And my electrical system has not caught fire, which is wonderful.
A win across the board.
Exactly.
Across the board.
Yeah.
So how long have you had this rig on the road? 4 years, you said?
4.5 years.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Why the choice for the 170?
I actually thought it was 144 when I bought it. I bought it sight unseen. So I actually bought it via...
You get this thing or you go find it and you're like, wow, there's a lot more space in here than I thought.
I bought it sight unseen. Actually, it was CarMax. And it was in like Virginia or something like that. It had 23,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
I got a steal on it even for CarMax. Because what they do is they like price match.
Yeah.
But they didn't have... Because CarMax doesn't really deal in cargo vans.
Yeah.
They like there was like... Anyway, I got a really good deal on it.
That's awesome.
And
especially I would imagine this would have been
2019.
2019.
Yeah, when I bought it.
I mean, getting a steal in 2019 was great.
Exactly. So I got the Sprinter because of the clearance more than anything.
Yeah.
And I've not regretted it. I mean,
awesome.
it had 23,000 miles on it when I got it. It has 116,000 now.
Good
so
for you.
I found, if you find a good mechanic and keep I mean, I've replaced the suspension, like brakes, probably on my 3rd set of tires.
Yep.
But like, aside from the wear and tear for having 8,000 pounds on the suspension and everything, it's actually been great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a Mercedes owner. I love them, but I understand the different, like yesterday I interviewed a very tall gentleman and, we talked about it. I said the Ford Transit is really your only go-to.
Yep.
Like it has the highest, interior height of any rig on the road. So like, there are very few options from that perspective.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I don't know if I mentioned my Dolphin, which also had 23,000 miles on it when I bought it, which for a 30-year-old vehicle is not always a good thing.
Yeah.
It broke down on me like 6 times. And it kept popping belts every like 2,000 miles.
Yeah.
The 30-year-old alternator was overheating and melting the belts.
Yeah.
So after that, I was like, screw it.
Yep.
I'm just going to get a more expensive vehicle.
More reliable.
Yeah. And like, I'm sure there will be a day that like she breaks down, but I mean, considering the fact she's been my home for almost 5 years now,
it's
impressive. It's wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like it was the reason why I also wanted a Mercedes. They are maybe a little more expensive to maintain, but I think the overall life span of the vehicle has the greatest opportunity.
I believe that as well.
Like I think the engine is a tank. It will drive forever if you take care of it. And so I think realistically, like we could have our rigs for 10 years and have no issues.
Easily.
Like
Absolutely.
not even close.
Well, and the emission system's the only thing that worries me. And especially the 2011 through 2013, I think they have that old EGR valve that is, I've already had to not replace mine. I just get it cleaned every 20,000 miles.
Gotcha.
And there will be a day, I think they're redesigning it. There's like...
Yeah.
Anyway, I've had several friends that have had this year that have had issues with it, and I did at some point, but like I said, just went in and had some... No, actually, I take it back. It did get replaced once under warranty in the first... It was at 40,000 miles.
Yep.
And I think it's more a consequence of the owner before me. It was a fleet vehicle, but it was stop and go traffic.
Yeah.
And that's not good for these. Someone told me when I got it, drive it like you stole it.
Yep.
Hot and fast. And sure enough.
Like people laugh at me all the time. I've done 61,000 miles in less than a year and a half. Like I drive a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. And you're towing, which puts even more.
Well, that's relatively new.
Yeah.
But but normally like I'm driving fast and long distances. And so like the guys that maintain my vehicle and have gone through the first 2 services are like, you're great. Like, and I'm like, they're like, you drive it like it should be driven, like long and hard and, go fast and like, you're good.
Yeah. So. And I try to be mindful of the in-city drive. I mean, it's just stressful if nothing else.
In general,
But like just to be able to, minimize the wear and tear on it. And I did tow a car behind it for a while, and then I blew it up in a towing accident. And so I don't do that anymore. So now I just have an e-bike that I'll, jog around on.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Question number 8. What is your best bathroom? Number 1 or number 2 story from Life on the Road? Is there a toilet in the rig?
Oh, yeah, I have a composting toilet like most of us do. I think the worst.
Actually, I'll tell you from all my interviews, it's not what most of us have.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a surprise.
The majority, I would say, is the cassette.
Really?
And then
I did that for the first year.
The second option is none. And then the third is composting.
I can't believe people who do
I know. God bless them.
I would say my worst is just with the composting toilet, you just get flies in there sometimes.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, but it happens.
Yeah.
And in moist environments, it happens way more often. My regret is I got a C head, which is like a brand no one's really heard of.
Yep.
But they're terrible. Like in there, no, this is a true story. In the manual, like there's a risk of overspray.
Oh,
like,
Lord.
Well, the whole point is to separate the two, right?
Yeah, of course.
And for the female anatomy, like there's overspray, and so it cross-contaminates, right? In the way it shouldn't, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so it adds more moisture in there.
Yes.
And the manual says, okay, go to a dollar store, get yourself a spoon.
Shut up.
And you have to like put a hole in it and like do this.
Shut up. Come on.
I mean, it fits in the space that I built. So I've tried to look at the Nature's Head and like the Airhead, and they won't fit.
The Airhead won't fit?
No, none of them won't fit because I have a specific slider that I built
for it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to spend $500 and redo the whole thing.
Understand.
So it's fine, but like the biggest problem I have is the Airhead, the C head.
Yeah.
And so most people don't have that issue,
Yeah.
right? Like I have a friend who has her Nature's Head, and she's had it as long as I've had the C head.
I have the Airhead.
Yeah, and no one's ever had a problem with it.
That's why I was so surprised when you said that, because I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like,
well, this one gets a lot more, because there's cross-contamination, it's also designed not to be vented. And so because it's not vented, I have to clean it every month or so, which some people can go a lot longer than that.
I'm going on 3 months right now.
Yeah, exactly. And if you keep it dry, like you don't have to,
Nope.
but, and I don't mind having to do it every month, but like when you have to be careful about it's just, when you think about it, it's like, it's perfect for that.
Yeah.
So that is my regret is in getting a C head specifically.
Gotcha.
Not a composting toilet at all.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
People on this show know I will champion the composting toilets forever. Like I think they're the greatest things, since sliced bread. But any horror stories along the road?
I I can't imagine anything worse than like maggots in your compost. It's terrible.
That would be
because then you
bad.
have to take the whole thing out and sterilize
everything.
And good luck finding a place where you can do that. You can't just go to a normal RV park and just be like, because then you have to spray the whole thing down. You got to bleach it, and where do you do with the bleach? Like
it's a pain in the ass.
It's terrible, and that has happened to me a couple of times. Unfortunately, that's usually when I like put the van away for like a week or so, and I'm like, not staying in
actively
it. Right,
using
exactly.
it.
And then so that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
Any quality, I always tell people you're not a real van lifer till you've had pee on your floor.
I've had that, of course.
Kicked over a pee jug.
We all have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a classic
story.
Absolutely. I love
That's just normal.
That's normal.
Yeah, one thing I do like about the C head is it's just a normal like water jug.
Oh,
and
that's
so
nice.
it actually means you can just toss it out every so often, and you don't have to worry about cleaning a proprietary bottle.
Yep.
So that's nice.
Cleaning my pee jug is not
I don't really have to do that. I just recycle it when I'm done with it. I'll clean it and then I'll recycle it when I'm ready.
I like that idea much better. Yeah, it's kind of a pain, but it is what it is. Again, welcome to van life.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why I asked the question.
And I would rather do that because
then deal with the cassette all day long.
I had a cassette in my pop-up trailer. It was terrible, and it only goes for a couple days.
Yes, like Vin was talking last night about it, and I was like, absolutely not. Like, so disgusting. Like the mixing of liquids and solids and like dumping that. Blah.
I guess when something happens to this, and I haven't tried hard enough to have something happen to it, I take pretty good care of it. Maybe one of these days I'll accidentally run over it or something. Give myself an excuse to get a new one. I'd build myself a custom little box and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, the technology is pretty simple.
It's pretty straightforward. And actually, I remember when I first got on the road, I was looking at it and like pricing out the resin or whatever they call them, the separators, the diverters.
Yeah, the diverter.
And they were $500.
Yeah.
Now you can get them for $100 on Etsy.
Exactly.
So
you could probably.
It's kind of like lithium. The prices come down a lot.
Exactly.
So,
electric
you can do a lot more with it.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. Question 9: what has been the happiest moments and the hardest moments of living your life on the road?
We talked a little bit about this, but I think dating in the nomad community was...
Is that your happiest or hardest?
No, hardest.
Yeah, I know. I'm kidding.
Where I made a very poor decision in someone that I invited into my life, into a committed relationship. And unfortunately, they were not the type of person that could really have an ongoing friendship with.
Oh, interesting.
Keeping in mind, like, I am friends with several of my exes.
Sure.
And, I'm friendly with my ex-husband, even though we have nothing in common anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that was the decision, because it's just really a small community.
Very small. Yep.
And so, the silver lining of it is that I branched out of the group that I had been with, and now here I am with a bunch of, dirtbag van lifers.
Exactly.
My people.
Exactly.
So, it forced me out of my comfort zone that I've been in for several years.
Okay.
So that was probably that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
And that's not unique to the nomad community. It's just, sleeping around in your friend group is, it makes it complicated. If you have emotionally intelligent and mature individuals, but there's a lot of challenge in this life because if you're not, it's a very hard life if you're not, I work in tech.
Yeah.
I drive a Mercedes.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right. But Nomadland is a true story.
Yep.
Right. Well, no, it's not a true story,
but
it's
I know what you're saying.
But it's a true story in our community. Right.
Correct.
It's very common where someone's going to have their engine blow up.
Yeah.
And then they're at the worst point of their lives because they're underemployed.
They lost everything.
And so I think that finding individuals who are at the same point in life as you are is really difficult.
Yeah, you're right.
Because I don't know that I would be super compatible with someone who, does seasonal work as an example.
For
right?
Sure.
Like who is in one spot for 6 months and then gets to play for 6 months. I'm jealous of those people. That's wonderful. It's a wonderful lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I'm probably...
Doesn't fit with how you live.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm more compatible with someone who has kind of a 9 to 5 and we have... major holidays off and that sort of thing, because it's just a matter of having the same pattern of travel as much as anything else.
Well,
right?
And again, too, I think what you said is very interesting in a sense that it's hard in the nomadic community, and most people don't necessarily realize until they are nomads and they are living on the road. Our community is very small.
It's very small.
And dating in general is very hard.
Yeah.
Dating as a queer woman is very hard. Yep. That gets smaller and smaller as we get further down.
You would think she would catch me plenty of queers, but she hasn't kept up her end of the bargain yet. Yeah,
she's still working on that end. Yeah, exactly.
Well, she's only 5 months. We'll keep our expectations low. Yeah.
Right. She can work into that.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's interesting that to your point though, finding that compatibility within our community with such a small kind of pool is difficult, especially when you're passionate about being a nomad.
Yeah.
And you're passionate about really loving this lifestyle.
Yeah.
I have come across many people in the last year and a half that aren't nomads and, really enjoy that companionship and those friendships, and some of them are more, but at the same time I can't see myself changing this lifestyle. I don't want to give that up.
And I don't either. I joke that I'm waiting for the woman that's going to get me to slow down, but not stop.
Slow down's different than giving
stop.
up.
Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm right after this I'm going on a date, right?
Okay.
Right? Speaking of which.
Yeah, exactly.
We're fine.
Okay, good.
But I have a date with someone who lives in Flagstaff, and we had a great time on the first date.
Yeah.
But pretty clear that I'm in town for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so what happens with that? Who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
I doubt this is my future ex-wife or my future emergency contact. But just the mechanics of it are tricky. So
yeah, for sure.
I think there's a little more willingness to do long distance in queer relationships, but even as emotionally available as I like to think I am, and I've really tried to become over the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
I'm still not available in the same conventional way.
Yeah.
Right? So
the idea or the definition of available is very different in our community. It's has nothing to do with my emotional maturity.
Right.
Because that's there and present. It's my availability of physically
literally to be there,
in the same spot.
Right. If I have a partner and we're long distance, it's complex.
Yeah.
Right.
Super complex.
And to be fair, I've not seriously dated anyone who was a sticks and bricks person.
Yes.
I have only dated nomads since being on the road.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And, most of them I'm friends with after the fact, but it's still really, really hard. So I think given how small the community is, being really careful about who I
100%.
become close with.
Yeah. It's interesting because most of my relationships have all been sticks and bricks. I've had one, close relationship with a nomad since being on the road, and we're still friends. But to your point, my desire would be to date a nomad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the ideal thing.
Right.
You both have rigs. You travel together. You travel apart. You come back together. That idea makes perfect sense.
It does on paper, but then you're like I went on a date with someone who we were in Prescott, and we met on Tinder, and wonderful individual. I still consider her a friend.
Yeah.
We went on a date, and, she was in her, and this is a pattern. People in their first year on the road just want to be free. And those are her words.
Yeah.
But, when you throw off the shackles of a conventional life, you just want to go explore.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
go and do and be
exactly.
everything.
So, even, we had a really good time.
Yeah.
Even the question of, a second date was like, well, I'm going this way. And she's like, well, I'm going this way.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't get the chance to get to know each other well enough.
Yeah.
Over
a length of time.
Right.
Exactly. I think, we talk about it all the time in this community, the relationships that you build, they happen in a second and they're deep.
Oh, I was going to tell you, that's right. I was going to say there's an analogy between, there's a joke when you're what do lesbians bring on a second date?
Okay.
A U-Haul, right?
Okay, wait. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
you haven't heard that one before?
I am a straight male individual. Kristen, shout out Kristen, was chatting about
the road
this.
forks?
Was chatting about this, and I'm an idiot just going, okay, don't know this joke.
So oxytocin's a bitch, and you bond really, but it's very similar. You bond really fast with people, and you get these fast relationships.
Yeah.
Before you really have to go through anything difficult together. So you go deep fast.
Okay.
But I actually think it's a really false sense of intimacy.
Yeah.
And romantically, it's more like limerence, which is you kind of fall head over heels with each other.
Yep.
Without actually the benefit of dating a sticks and bricks is you literally have distance and you're forced to learn and
slowly discover
get to know each other over time. I actually think it's a real problem in nomadic relationships and queer relationships. I mean, I'm not where you just kind of lesbians are also famous for their 72-hour first dates, right? They go hard and fast. And I know tons of people who got married after 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And it's and this is a queer thing, right? But it's also a nomad thing where you
it is a nomad thing.
You just kind of start, traveling together.
All of a sudden you've been a week together and you're we've been together for 5 years.
Exactly. Exactly. So nomad time or queer time, whatever, it's very, very similar.
Interesting.
And it's also really similar in the I talked about this, I think we were off camera, but it was the queer adolescence and the kind of an RV adolescence.
Yeah.
Where you kind of throw off the shackles of this conventional lifestyle and you're I'm going to go do what I want to do, right?
Exactly.
And then you go through a lot of, and I'm not saying this to shame anyone. It's just you're learning about parts of yourself that you haven't been able to express before.
Correct. Well, it goes back to what we first talked about of being on the road and being a nomad and having the freedom to really think and do and find who you are and be your most authentic self.
Exactly. And it takes some learning to do that, but it also takes time.
Yeah, for sure.
I celebrate people being able to do it, but I also think it's really difficult to date someone who's only been on the road for a year.
Correct.
Because
they haven't found that.
Right. They haven't figured out their travel style. They haven't figured out who they are as a nomad, who are their friends, what do they want to do, what's their travel, do they want to continue doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, you've been doing this for 6 years. This is something that you want to continue to do. You could start dating somebody and then they're like, I'm done. And you're like, well, shit, I'm not.
Right, exactly, right.
Now what happens?
Right, exactly. Or maybe I decide it's had a good run. I'm not going to sell the van anytime soon, but I'll keep it in the backyard and,
exactly.
keep it for weekend trips. I
love it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm also not the person who needs a person to compliment or complete me or whatever.
Gotcha.
I mean, that's also one of the benefits of being an older woman. I'm I figured my shit out a while ago. I know what I like, but I'm still, and it's tricky because in my younger years, I would critique men that I would date because they're it's always I like sports. Here's my fish. I want someone who's going to watch sports with me and play video games. And I'm like, they're basically looking for someone to compliment them.
Yeah.
And inadvertently, I have built a life for myself where I kind of need someone who can complement that because I don't have the flexibility in what I mean, in some ways I have a ton of flexibility. I can date anyone, anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Theoretically. But at the end of the day, it's like, I need someone who is fundamentally okay with me not being
with
there.
how you live, correct?
Exactly.
Yep,
right?
100%.
Or is at least willing to live in a car with me part-time, right?
To accept parts of it. Yeah,
exactly.
I get it.
That,
it is a challenge from that
perspective.
perspective.
I don't regret that.
Yeah.
But like, that part of me is not going to change anytime soon.
Oh, and it's like you said, it's that dichotomy of like, I used to like really not like this, and like
and now I'm that person.
And now you're looking at it like that
I'm
person.
I'm like, well, I get it.
That's funny. I love it.
as open-minded as I want to be, and like I want to learn from someone who would be a partner and have them complement my life and me compliment them. Like, I'm a terrible cook. I'm a terrible gardener. Like, I can't draw to save my life. Like, there's a lot of things that I would love to learn how to do that I think a partner could bring me into, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I would hope that they would. This is a big part of my personality now, so like I would hope that would.
The flip side of that,
exactly right.
Totally
so at least they would enjoy coming out for a bit. But the other benefit is like I bring my own home with me.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Like,
hey, there's a lot of cards on the table.
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
it. Well, kind of last question. Speaking about van life, define #van life in your own words, and then provide a piece of advice for somebody wanting to live a life on the road.
Can I do the advice part first?
Sure. 100%.
I would highly recommend people. I'm really glad I did V1 in my van first.
Okay.
And I tried a couple different rigs. And I mean, I was financially privileged to be able to do so.
Yeah.
But I would say, some people say, oh yeah, just get yourself go camping in your car.
Yeah.
I do your van build like half-assed.
Yeah.
That was the best decision I ever made, actually, was just to get out there, not invest too much money. I think I did my first build in 6 weeks while working full time in my like family member's driveway.
Yep. Yeah.
And it was functional. I had a sink and everything.
Yeah.
But like,
it doesn't have to be done. It shouldn't be done, actually.
So like, put something together.
Yeah.
And then go out and try it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was a very low level of effort. And then but more importantly, like as I was living in the space, it taught me what I wanted.
Yes.
And so I stand by.
I think it's great advice.
Yeah. Spend,
a minimal amount.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
Like they have a bunch of like great no build videos out there now. Like there's stuff you can do.
Yep.
I would not necessarily recommend people go out in like a minivan, but some people can. Some
Yeah.
people can do that.
And again, I don't think it's necessarily the rig type, but I like the mindset that you're presenting in a sense that like go minimal early, have an idea, but learn once you're out there a little bit.
And be ready to be humbled.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I have accomplished a lot. There is nothing that helped my self-confidence more than like just living out on my own, literally doing everything yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
The empowerment is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a big deal for me. Now,
for sure.
Now I'm just insufferable. I'm so self-confident. Can't have a conversation with me.
I fucking love it. Define it for somebody that's been on the road for 6 years. I mean, you were long before #van life. So define #van life in your own words.
I don't like that it's limited to vans. And like, it's so funny. We were talking about this earlier, the like dichotomy between RVers and van lifers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a difference in the community and like politically, like other reasons, like the queer community like draws me more to the van life group now than the RVers, because RVers are a little bit more, I don't know, I kind of feel like conventional in some of the ways they approach things.
For sure.
But I would say it's really just anyone living on wheels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, it's hard to, I should have thought about this answer before I sat down with you.
I like your answer.
I think
anybody living on wheels is
anyone
great.
living on wheels is part-time, full-time.
Yeah.
I hate that bullshit.
I do too.
It's the like,
Doesn't
you
matter
have
to
less
me.
credibility, like because you're a part-timer.
Correct.
No,
Yeah,
it just
absolutely
means that you're in a different like.
You're doing something different.
Right, you have a different flavor of your life than I
Correct.
do of mine. Doesn't mean I'm any more like cool or whatever.
Exactly.
I'm too old to be cool. I don't care anymore.
It's honestly why I started the new company that I did.
Yeah.
I live in a company.
Yeah.
It's the concept is covering all the rigs.
Yeah.
Everybody. It's the nomadic community.
And that is very cool because it's very. Do you have a travel trailer on there?
There is no travel trailer.
You don't have a travel trailer.
I am catching so much flack.
You don't have a fifth wheel.
It's
you
the
don't
one.
have a.
Okay, so I left RV out.
Yep.
but trailer I left out, and I'm catching a lot of flack from the trailer people, which I'm going to adjust and fix.
There are a lot more travel trailers on the road than anything else.
Yeah,
because
100%.
They're
easy.
They're easy, and you can start out with the thing you have. I don't think they're the best option for most people.
I agree. But I'm with you.
But they're great. I mean, that's what I started. I mean, that was my first full-time rig because the Class C kept breaking down, so I didn't.
So awesome. So you were kind of forced to.
Exactly.
A little bit.
Exactly. I wanted to get out on the road, but
no, I get it completely.
Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. This has been truly fun and amazing. It's been great learning a little bit about yourself. And this has been really fun. She is going to go on a date, so we're going to wish her luck on her date, which you're a little late for.
Not quite late. I'll text her.
And then we're going to go enjoy the rest of our friends here. And thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah.
Adolescence that a lot of us go through again as well.
For sure. For sure.
Second adolescence.
Yeah, second adolescence. Or third or fourth. Yeah, exactly. However many you need.
Yeah.
This is a new phone. This is the new one.
The 15. I just got one too.
I don't have, there's no silence button anymore.
Yeah, there is.
No. It's it's the new button. It's
I got the Canadian one. And so it's
the stories that you want to hear. Actually, real quick. I didn't check mic levels. I just want to make sure.
Howdy. How's everyone doing?
Perfect. We're good. Okay. That's always my fear.
Batteries are the word. Oh, no.
Talked for an hour and a half. And then Woodstock on Wheels, they're my problem children. We did theirs 5 times.
Oh, dear.
And then finally got it recorded. And thank you.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Cool.
Super easy, right?
Yeah. I'm surprised she didn't get up and start trying to eat me.
You were so good in the whole episode.
So good.
She was so just sleeping and laying.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're just a sleepy puppy dog.
This is fun.
Yeah, this is amazing. I always I just love conversations. Yeah, and I love learning about other people. I love talking about the community. And